Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live Week 18. Cannot believe it's here. We've been at this for 4 good months, almost 5. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed the show. John Ryan, every Saturday, he's been with us all season, giving us winners throughout. John is, as always, has been hitting big. He's been at this for 3 decades. 10-unit bets, last 4 years, 68%. His NFL and NCAA combined, 65%. John, how's the recent heater going?
Well, it cooled off last week, Jim, to be honest. We actually lost our last 2 10-unit max bets, which does happen. You know, we grind it out week by week, as you well know, and that's probably the biggest lesson we can give people who are starting betting is that you never go for that big, huge win to, change your life, because it could change your life in a highly negative way too. It's supposed to be fun, and that's what we aim to do. And I'm sure you're going to have some good stuff for us to talk about with DFS and player options, and I can't wait.
So, John, let's start out. As always, everybody, John will go over a game for betting. I'll go over some DFS, a couple positions. John will give us a second game. I'll finish out the DFS, and then finally, John will give us his third play, and then we will call it a day. Now, remember, I know it's Week 18. A lot of you aren't playing fantasy at this point, but tomorrow, Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern, I'm still going to do what I call a start-sit show, but that could be any questions you have. Questions about games, questions about prop betting, anything along the lines. I've got you covered, so join me tomorrow for that, and we'll get you. John, you want to talk about the Giants and the Eagles game and in-game betting. So I'm just going to start it off there, and I'm going to let you tell everybody what they need to know about this game.
Well, this suddenly hit me earlier in the week that what do the Eagles really need? If you're a fan of them and a passionate fan as they are, is it really necessary for the Eagles to win this game? It's really not. They're locked in the 5 seed. Is this team capable with the talent they have on paper right now to win 3 road games and get to the Super Bowl? I would say yes, but they can't do that if they're tired. And the last 2 games, the defense has been gashed, and they've been gashed in the second half, which really stood out to me. And that, to me, spells fatigue. Plain and simple. They went through a 6-week gauntlet. It seemed to climax with that 49ers game where the defense just was, destroyed. They were, weak. They were tired. They showed it in the second half, and they haven't had time to recover. So I would, if I was the GM, Jim, I think I would give the starters the week off and let it be, because what is the odds that the Dallas Cowboys are going to lose to Washington? Granted, Washington has beaten them 3 out of 5 times in D.C., but this Washington team's not like those teams that defeated the Cowboys. They lost earlier at 45-10 in Week 11. So I would roll the dice, so to speak, if I was a GM, and the rest is so critical for this defense. Maybe don't rest the offense, but the defense, especially the back end of that secondary, is looking just really, really bad. I don't know if they could even beat a team from the NFC South in the first week of the wild card at this point. So that's my take there. So if they start their stars, which is apparently what they're going to do, keep an eye on that Dallas scoreboard. And I'm sure they're going to be doing the same thing, because if Dallas gets up 10-0, 14-0 in that first quarter or the second quarter, I think there's a high probability that the Eagles will pull their starters. And after all, they're playing in New York. They won't have to worry about getting booed by the fans for giving up on a game. And it would be the right thing to do. But that opens up the opportunity to bet the Giants. So, like in-game, the perfect fantasy for me right now would be the Eagles are up 10-13-0, and then Dallas scores a touchdown to go up 17-0, at which point then you're going to get the Giants at just a ton of points. It could be double digits easily. Could be as high as 17 points at that mark. Eagles pull the starters. The Giants do have a chance to come back and at least cover the spread of that in-game line. So that's the idea I have in mind for the game tomorrow. That both games start at 4:25, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of scoreboard watching up there at MetLife Stadium. The game itself, though, Jim, quickly, the Eagles' offense has been okay. That's not the problem. The problem has been the defense. However, the Giants' offense is 30th in the league, scoring 15 points a game. They're 30th, averaging 272 per game. They're averaging 4.4 yards per play, which is 30th out of 32 teams. And I could go on and on and on. So the defense actually, what do they get by playing this game? They're going to play well against a horrible offense, but does that give them confidence? I don't think so. So again, I think the Eagles are the play here pre-flop. Maybe you do 50%, or maybe you just do the first half betting line. Now, one quick system here, Jim, before I turn it over to you with the Eagles here is you're going to bet on favorites that average 23 to 28 points per game. They're facing a foe that gives up 23 to 28 points per game. Favorites coming off back-to-back games in which 50 or more total points were scored in each game. That has gone 61 and 31 against the spread for 67%. 56 and 36 under. You know, the underplay, I think, is really a live bet here, too. 61%. That goes all the way back to 2010. And if the game occurs in the last 4 weeks of the regular season, 20 and 7 against the spread, 74%, 17 and 10 for 63% to the under. So I do like the Eagles here. You know, first half betting line. If you prefer that, I see no problem taking that too.
As always, John Ryan teaching you to be a better gambler, not just giving you trends, not just telling you about the team, but telling you about the idea of scoreboard watching in week 18. Because yes, that does happen, and rest is important. If a team who's in the playoffs has nothing to play for at some point, then yes, 100%. Great call on those, John. I love that strategy you're going with. DFS.
Thanks. Hopefully it works.
Yeah, I don't know. I love it. It sounds like it has all the, well, hey, the whole operation is correct. We just need to keep the patient alive now. That's it. But
That's right.
that's it. But it makes sense. DFS quarterbacks. Justin Fields, 7,200 at Green Bay. Look, Fields hasn't had through the roof games. He's playing defensive coordinator Joe Barry. That defense has been atrocious. Now, these teams played in week 1. Throw it out. Packers are playing reasonably well. Then Fields was, coming in with a new offense like that. Well, really with new DJ Moore, I should say. Things weren't ready. They've become a much better team throughout the season. So Justin Fields in a game that should be high scoring. Remember, on the Bears side, cornerback Jalen Johnson's out. Kyler Gordon is iffy with a calf. Green Bay is going to put some points up, but I like the Fields side of this because Fields might get going as a runner too here. And so that's where you want to take advantage of that in DFS. Jared Goff, 6,700 against Minnesota. Look, my mind is Detroit is playing to win. I know John talked earlier about Dallas and whether Detroit understands this. Dallas could lose. Philly could lose. Detroit could still be the 2 seed. There's no way Dan Campbell is going to take for granted that Dallas on the road is going to win, because Dallas on the road, they've been garbage against a lot of teams. Philly, like you said, they could end up resting players. And I'm not convinced that Tyrod Taylor doesn't beat him anyway, honestly. But they're playing. And it may not happen, but Dan Campbell's going to play as if it will, because if he can get that 2 seed, he knows his team at home is so much better. Anything he could do to get a home game or more home games, he's going to do it. And that would be huge. So, yeah, I think he plays Jared Goff. And remember, home Goff versus road Goff. When they were in Minnesota and they won 30-24, they ran a lot. They're going to be able to throw here. And Minnesota, I talked about this in last week's game with Green Bay. These divisional teams that have played Brian Flores' defense a second time, they understand the craziness now. You could shred them because the talent is a problem, but the first time you see him, you don't know what to do with it. Derek Carr is a GPP only play. We know Derek Carr is hot garbage. Played Atlanta earlier in the season. He threw for 300 yards, no touchdowns. They kicked 5 field goals. But Derek Carr's at home here. And it's basically, this game is taking place at the same time as the Tampa Bay game. So both New Orleans and Atlanta are playing. If they win, and if Tampa loses, then the winner of this game makes the playoffs. But New Orleans has the edge in that there's another scenario with the later games. If other teams lose, they could win and still get in. So Atlanta only has one path to get. So they're scoreboard watching Tampa Bay. But the Saints, they have skin in the game with Seattle and with Green Bay. So they're going to play this all the way through. Tyrod Taylor, here's your cheap one, 5,300. I gave him last week. 300 yards, 40 yards rushing, only 1 touchdown, but he got the 300-yard bonus. I'm going back to him. He's a good quarterback. And Brian Dable, great play caller. And he understands that Philly is struggling against the pass. Hey, they struggle against the run right now, too. But Tyrod Taylor's live here. He is definitely live here. Running backs, he's expensive, but Rachaad White at Carolina. Carolina's going to have to spend their resources on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Baker Mayfield. And Rachaad White may not be a great running back, but we've seen all year. He'll get touches. He'll get goal line touches. He'll get receptions. However they need him to work, he'll work. This couldn't be much of a better matchup. Carolina does not do well against the run, and so White's going to get volume here. And again, we've seen him get games with multiple touchdowns. That's always in play if the ball's at the goal line because they do run at the goal line. Aaron Jones is 6,300 against the Bears. He has had 20-plus touches in 2 straight weeks. His yardage has been great. He looks like vintage Aaron Jones. And the Bears have been a very good defense, but the Packers have a very good offensive line. And the Packers are playing to make the playoffs. And they're going to need Aaron Jones. I think there's a lot of points scored in this game. So Aaron Jones could be a big factor. A.J. Dillon's out. That's huge because A.J. Dillon eats into a lot of that work. Patrick Taylor's going to play, but he's not going to command the A.J. Dillon role. So I think Jones gets over 20 touches. James Conner, my favorite, 6,100 at Seattle. Seattle can't tackle. They simply cannot tackle. They're out of position frequently. That's not getting fixed. That's been an issue for half a season. That's not getting fixed for one game, and they're not fixing it against the Cardinals. And we saw the Cardinals last week throw 2 tight ends out against Philly. They were running duo. They were running counter. They were running some zone. Connor is a beast. He has been hot for 4 games. Keep riding at 6,100. He's cheap. Zamir White, we played him last week. It didn't work out. This week, they're playing Denver. Denver can't stop the run at all. And they can't, and Denver's done for the season. So, I mean, I don't know how much motivation they have. Zamir White has motivation because Josh Jacobs will be gone. He was out of the franchise tag this year. So he'll be gone. So Zamir White, 6,000, cheap. Last one, GPP only. This is a dart throw. Chase Brown is 4,600 against Cleveland. The season's over. You have to think Cincinnati's in evaluation mode. There's really no reason to give Joe Mixon heavy work here. So this is GPP because there's a lot of uncertainty. So we're going to go with Chase Brown. Herman asked about the weather hurting Tyrod Taylor. You know what? That's something we'll check on game day morning because I think the weather reports are going to go vastly in and out. So yes, the good question is this. Check the weather report in the morning. It's wind is the big problem. Now, if it's heavy snow, if we're talking 3+ inches of snow, fade them. If we're not talking 3+ inches of snow, the receivers and the quarterback get the advantage. If it's light to moderate snow, it's always an advantage to the offense. If the wind's over 15 miles an hour, you could fade that. But great question, Herman. Great question about the weather. But check that game day because every time I do weather, it changes. So it's almost like on Saturday, I'm not even willing to go there because this big storm we had, first it was like going to hit Sunday, then it's going to hit Saturday. So check it in the morning before you set your DFS lineups. All right, John, Bills and the Dolphins. Everybody can't wait for this game. So they played this one early in the season. The Bills killed them 48-20. It was in Buffalo. Dolphins are all kinds of beat up. They're down Bradley Chubb for the season. They had lost Jalen Phillips on the Black Friday game. 2 best pass rushers are down. Xavier Howard, their second best outside corner, is out in this game. Dinged up on the offensive line. Jalen Waddle, limited practices. Raheem Mostert. It looks like Waddle and Mostert give it a go here. On the other side of the ball, the Bills, they were playing great, but the last 2 weeks, they've won. They haven't looked great. They barely beat the Chargers last week against the Patriots. Even despite their defense scoring, they barely won that game. But they're winning, and they come into this game. Obviously, they own the Dolphins in the first meeting, but we're going to see what happens here. John, break this game down for us.
Well, simply, Jim, I see Buffalo winning this game fairly easily. They're 2.5-point favorites. I was just checking it right now. The one thing I don't like is the percentage of tickets is around 65%. That's not a red flag yet, but if more money does come in with bigger bet type of accounts, and that'll be offset by any increase in the number of tickets. The public is definitely going to bet Buffalo here. I don't think there's really any reason to think that there's going to be a bounce back after what Miami did last week, which was a 10-unit play that I lost against Baltimore. Baltimore just absolutely destroyed them. But keep in mind, too, I was looking at some of the more advanced metrics. And over the last 30 years, I can make an argument that Baltimore is the best team of any of them over the last 30 years on both sides of the ball. There's been teams that have been better offensively. There's been teams that have been better defensively that have gone on and won the Super Bowl. But this is a very special team in the Baltimore Ravens, and that cannot be underrated what they did last week to the Dolphins. Tua is having a tremendous season. He should be in the MVP conversation, but for some reason he's not. But he's having just an unbelievable season. But the defense here, it's almost like talking about the Eagles. They are destroyed in the secondary. And, Diggs, I think you're the expert on the player stuff, but I think he's going to have a monster game, just like he did in the first matchup with the Dolphins, where he had 3 touchdowns and I guess close to 200 yards receiving, if I remember right. And I just see this being another replication of that. Maybe it's not 48-20, but I do think Buffalo wins by double digits. Miami is the top offense in the league, so they're going to be able to keep pace, but I don't think they're going to be able to keep pace because the Buffalo defense, when they play and focus play and fill those gaps properly and don't overreact, they are one of the best units in the AFC. And I would put them right up there with the Cleveland Browns, to be honest with you, in a playoff situation, and we'll have to see about that later. But it's interesting to note, too, that Buffalo, if they lose, could actually not make the playoffs. Some weird stuff would have to happen.
Not much.
Jacksonville loss and Steelers loss would have to happen. And then the Colts, I believe, would have to tie against the Texans.
They don't need a tie. They need 2 losses. That's all they need. Those 2 losses, right? They lose
2 losses and they're out.
That's it. No, right, and they're out.
So there you go. So it could happen. I mean, it's pretty realistic. So I think there's more pressure, more urgency on the Buffalo side than Miami. Miami's in no matter what.
Yep.
So, they might be the 6th seed, which nobody wants to be. You could be the 2 seed if you beat the Bills. So there's a lot on the line here. The betting system here just brings clarity to the whole matchup. And what we're going to do here is we are betting on road teams with a total of 48 or more points in the game. Host has a winning record on the season. Game occurs in the second half of the regular season. And the road team scored 35 or more points in their previous same season matchup against this current host. 32-13 straight up. Notice I'm playing the money line on this bet. This game could come down to a field goal, and I certainly don't, want to win by 1 or 2 here. And see the Bills, kick a field goal trailing by 1 point with 10 seconds. I think if it's 2.5 or less, you'd play the money line in this situation. And if they win by double digits, it doesn't really matter what the vig is that you're laying. So I like the Bills here quite a bit. From my predictive model, Bills are 21-2 straight up, 19-4 against the spread in games where they score 27 or more points and have the same or fewer turnovers in games played over the last 10 seasons. So there's an 82% probability they score 27 or more and have the same or fewer turnovers. So I got to go to the bank with that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that sounds like a winner. That's a great, again, a whole set of rationale, connecting the dots. The Bills are the play here. I want to circle back to Herman's question about the weather. So NFL weather right now, and again, check it tomorrow. They're saying 2% chance of snow, 33 degrees, which for New York and Philly, they don't care about that. That's not a cold game. That's where they're from. 7-mile-an-hour winds. So the wind's not a factor. As of right now, snow is not a factor, but check it tomorrow. And I know you were talking about Gardner Minshew, who plays tonight. So if you're worried, check the weather before Gardner Minshew's kickoff at 8:15 Eastern. If you think there's going to be something crazy where the weather shifted, then make a move there. But Minshew's in a good spot here too, because Houston cannot defend play action. So I want to get to that. And Shane Steichen, play action. So Minshew isn't in a bad spot. All right, DFS wide receivers. I'm on Russ St. Brown. 8,600 against Minnesota. I said if you're going to play Jared Goff earlier, if you're going to go with that narrative that they'll pass a little more than they did when they were in Minnesota, which they'll turn Goff loose at home more. I'm on our St. Brown's the way to go. Middle of the field against Minnesota. That's an optimal place to attack. Also, DK Metcalf, 7,200. GPP only. They're playing Arizona. Arizona, they don't have personnel to deal with them. Their starting right cornerback is out. Metcalf frequently lines up on the offensive left side, so he would potentially be facing a backup cornerback. And Geno, now I know the Seahawks have plenty of motivation to win, because they win. They have a chance to make the playoffs. They win and the Packers lose, which they're playing the Bears. That could happen. Well, also Geno Smith gets $2 million if they make the playoffs. So Geno Smith's going to be heavily incentivized to have a big game. That's big money, especially if he doesn't make a monstrous contract. Look, DJ Moore, you hear me say his name a lot. He is never priced appropriately. He's only 7,000. And Justin Fields has had a great passer rating throwing to him all season. Look, I don't need to explain it. DJ Moore's a superstar. The Packers haven't covered anybody. People throw out Jair Alexander's name. He's not the guy he was a couple of years ago, simply put. They traded away Rasul Douglas earlier in the season. DJ Moore has a great connection with Fields. This is going to be a higher scoring game. That's where Fields is going to go. That's his guy. And Darnell Mooney, not that he did anything all year, he's out. So, I mean, really, they don't even have a great second target. Moore can win anywhere. Chris Olave, let's go back to him. 6,700 against Atlanta. If you're playing Derek Carr, go with Olave. The ankle should be better this week. I think the ankle was more of a problem than we knew last week, and that's why he didn't have the good game. But through practice this week, he seems to be not bothered by it. So I think now he's a full go as opposed to maybe last week he wasn't. The last one, no, two more. 6,100. DeAndre Hopkins against Jackson. Why do I like Hopkins? Incentives. Hopkins can make $750,000 in this game. Mike Vrabel, they're out of it. He's a player's coach. If Hopkins gets 7 catches, he gets $250,000. If he only gets 39 yards, another $250,000. If he scores 2 touchdowns, another $250,000. Ryan Tannehill's a quarterback. I think Tannehill will be willing to force the ball to Hopkins in this game. I'm not worried. Jacksonville's defense is healthy now. Hopkins could beat any of the corners. Tyson Campbell's not playing great. Darius Williams is too small. So I think they're going to try to get Hopkins at $750,000. So if they're going for that, I'm playing Hopkins in DFS because you could have a monster game. The yardage is low, but the 2 touchdowns is in play. All right, last one, cheapie. If you're going with Tyrod Taylor, I know we never know which receiver is going to hit. I like Wan'Dale Robinson at 4,200. We talk about the Eagles defense, and you could beat them anywhere. But Brian Dable really likes cooking up concepts in the middle of the field. And Wan'Dale Robinson is very accomplished in the middle of the field. I think it's a stylistic fit here. And at 4,200 with him and Taylor, you can get a lot of money spent elsewhere. All right, tight ends. Evan Ingram, 5,400 at Tennessee. I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is playing. Even if he doesn't play, C.J. Beathard will get him the ball underneath. He did last week, a whole bunch of passes. But if Lawrence is limited, he's not going to air it out. And that means it's an Evan Ingram game. Tennessee is all kinds of banged up across the board, all levels of the defense. They're playing with a lot of second-tier players. Ingram, it's going to be more of a controlled passing game. Juwan Johnson has an injury. So you check his status pregame, but he's been hot for 2 weeks running. He has touchdowns in the last 3. They're playing Atlanta. He's 3,600. If you want to go to triple stack in that game with Carr, Olave, Juwan Johnson's 3,600 is a nice little add-on in that wheel. Make sure he's active, but if he's active, I would treat him as a full go. Last one, Chiggy Okonkwo, same game as Evan Ingram. He's 3,500. I still think DeAndre Hopkins gets the lion's share of the work, but Okonkwo has had a very high scoring floor for the last month and a half. And at 3,500, if you're looking to save a little money, if Juwan Johnson, you're worried about his injury, that'd be the cheap play. I like Ingram, but he's more expensive. Defenses. The Giants, 2,300 at Philadelphia. John Ryan even said, maybe if Dallas gets out to a lead, Philly starts sitting some players. Giants defense isn't sitting down, and they've been playing aggressively. They're at home here. So I do think they're, if you want to save money, it's 2,300. You want to spend up? This one's GPP only. I think New England's probably going to come out and win for Belichick, but the Jets are 3,700. And if the Jets want to come out and they want to play one for their coach, hope, maybe they're thinking, big game of deal, we save his job. Don't know if that's a problem, but they could come up and they could really make New England hurt. But that's a GPP only. It's expensive. John, give us a third pick.
Well, I'll tell you that New England game, speaking of weather, I believe the weather is going to be a factor for that game. So like you said, you got to check the weather forecast tomorrow, but Boston could get as much as 14 inches of snow. And in Foxborough, being further away from the city, could get even more than that. So that's something to really keep an eye on with that game tomorrow. The total, I believe, is down to 30. And
yes.
If the forecast is correct, it's probably going to go lower. So, just keep that in mind. But the last play is the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Tennessee Titans here. And, preseason, Jim, what was the darling favorite of the AFC to unseat the Kansas City Chiefs? And they were going to go to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
The sentiment when it gets too, overzealous, if you will, or irrational exuberance, things don't work out sometimes for those teams. We often talk about the player who appeared on the cover of whatever magazine, that team. It's almost like a curse, and then they don't do anything. Jacksonville may not. Oh, Jacksonville will be in the playoffs. That I think is pretty certain in my mind, even if they lose this game. And I do see them losing this game. They've dominated the Tennessee Titans over the years, Jim, but why is Tennessee only a 4.5-point dog? It just sticks out to me like more than a sore thumb. It's more like a sore hand. It just smells kind of funny. And the Jacksonville defense has done a great job over the course of the season stopping the run, but in recent weeks, it has not done a good job stopping the run. And who does Tennessee have running in this game today? Derrick Henry. I got to think that might be a possible DFS on your radar. I could be wrong, but I think they're going to run him about 30 times.
That's a great call. That's a great call.
I do think they're going to try to win this game as well. I mean, what would be better than to beat a rival and possibly keep them out of the playoffs? If nothing else, keep them from winning the divisional title, because then the winner will be the winner of tonight's game Saturday night between Houston and Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So there's an awful lot on the line here. But it's summed up again, with the numbers. And the Jacksonville Jaguars here are a play against. So we're going to bet on a team priced between a 3.5-point favorite and a 3.5-point underdog. The team has forced no more than one turnover in each of their last 4 games. And they're playing an opponent that did not commit a turnover in their previous game, and that being Jacksonville. Jacksonville's defense also allowed less than 200 yards in that game last week. That set of parameters, Jim, 30-22 straight up. And we're talking about a dog here. 31-17 for 65% last 10 seasons. And if a divisional matchup, 11-7 straight up, 14-4 against the spread, 78% over the last 10 seasons. So I'm taking the Tennessee Titans here, and this is an 8-unit premium bet for the clients.
Oh, I love that one. The 8-unit premium bet. What a way to end that one off. I love that. Yeah, Vrabel's getting his boys to show up here. There's no doubt about that. And I love the overall call on that game. A couple comments in here. George, thank you for the kind words. Appreciate that. Herman asked a question about Taysom Hill. So Taysom Hill earlier in the season, we were seeing him upwards of 44% of the snaps. It was very, very positive. The last 3 games, his snap percentage, he had a game with it's like 16%, 19%. And then last week it was up to 34, but he only had 6 touches, 2 pass attempts, 2 rush attempts, 2 targets. And Juwan Johnson, it's not a 1-for-1 switch with him because Taysom Hill isn't like a traditional tight end. So that's not a 1-for-1 trade-off there. And the other thing is Jamal Williams will take heavy carries in this game if Kamara's out. Now, you certainly could go for Taysom Hill as a GPP only play because you never know when they're going to factor him, but they have really phased him out in the last 3 games. And I don't know if it was that foot issue that he did have and he missed a game with that. It might be that, but that's what we got to be careful. He's an older player, and if that foot really is an issue, so that he's GPP only for that reason. John, it's been a great season. You've been bringing the heat for 18 weeks. Hopefully you finish it out with another strong set of picks here, which I know you will. Everybody who's been with us, we appreciate you greatly. For John Ryan, I'm Jim Coventry. Tomorrow we will have a show at 11. It'll be the start sit, but that's any questions you have. It could be prop betting. It could be about game flow. You just want to talk football, we'll be here. John Ryan, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
Well, you can find me on the X at John Ryan Sports and the number 1. I do work and written content for RotoWire.com. NFL article was put up this morning, so make sure you check that out. It has more detailed information about some of the games we just talked about. And if you want a sample of the card for tomorrow, just send me a direct message at Twitter, and you'll get the whole kit and caboodle. I'll give you all access, NBA, college hoops, NHL. They've all been doing pretty good now. And hoping to bounce back in the NFL because last week we kind of got, we got hit in the chin pretty good. But we'll see if we can bounce back with a winning weekend for everybody.
Like I tell everybody, when you're gambling, you need to go to established winners professionals in the field. There's a lot of people throwing out betting advice. They don't know what they're doing. They might get lucky out again. John has consistency because of his models, his understanding of the game, and his experience. You'll learn from John while you're also making money. And there's no better recommendation I could give you than that. So again, John at John Ryan Sports 1, make sure you're following John, keeping up with his work. Go to his site, sign up for the predictive playbook. You won't be sorry you did. Alex, thank you for the kind words. Herman, appreciate you coming with us this season as well. And Alex reminds us the John Ryan line: bet with your heads, not over it. Things will balance out. Love that. Yep. All right. For John Ryan, I'm Jim Coventry, everybody. Good luck this weekend and Happy New Year.